am so excited to be here. One, I'm a big fan of the work that Mark is doing. Second, I'm on the Bill Campbell team for life, as Ronnie said. Bill, I had a great opportunity to get to know Bill. Bill's taught me a lot about leadership. Bill gave me the privilege of letting me tell his story. And I've been able to study Bill and to write about Bill. And he was a generous mentor to me and a supporter of the work that I'm doing. In fact, when I sat down and talked with him about some of my ideas and this book, and he spent hours and hours and hours with me. And I got up to leave our first conversation. He said, Liz, what you're doing is important. It's a really big idea, and it's going to make a difference to a lot of people. And then he said, kind of like was shaking my hand as I was walking out of his office, and he looked me straight in the eye, and he gave me that Bill Campbell look, and he said, don't screw this up. But he used more colorful language than that. And it was one of the most motivating things everyone's ever said to me. And he had these incredibly high standards. And it wasn't that he didn't want me to screw up telling his story. It was he wanted me to take this work and do my very, very best at it. So I'm excited to be here. I also am excited to be here because I am a football mom. And this is my son, middle linebacker, Menlo Atherton High School. I love the game of football, love the brotherhood. I'm thrilled to be here with you. I want to tell you a little bit about my transition when I was making the same transition that you are, leaving the world of college, going into the world of work. And I went to Brigham Young University. I went to undergrad there. I went to graduate school there. I went to business school. And out of business school, I joined a small, relatively unknown software company. But they were maverick, and they were growing really rapidly. The company I joined was called Oracle. And I joined them when they were still young, helped grow that company. And they had a very, very clear hiring profile when I joined. They recruited out of 17 schools. Some of the schools that you represented, they recruited from 17 schools, and they looked for three things. They looked for raw intelligence, and then they looked for people with an achievement orientation, but a particular achievement orientation. They looked with people with a freaky achievement orientation. Athletes, Olympians, people who had done sort of remarkable things. And then the third thing they looked for was nice. So really smart, driven, and nice. And I can tell you from having worked there, they sometimes compromised on the nice quality. Okay? Now, they recruited from 17 schools. BYU was not on that list of schools. Somehow I snuck in to this mix, but I found myself working around really, really brilliant people. I'm about a year into this rapidly growing company. About a year into it, I am 24 years old. I'm 24 years old. I have just barely a year of work experience. And they said to me, Liz, the company's growing really rapidly. We need someone to manage the training for this company. We're now up to about 5,000, 6,000 people. We need a training manager for the company. That's you. And Larry Ellison wants to have a world-class university as part of Oracle, and he said, we need you to go build a university for us. And I'm 24. And my only real qualification for this job of building a university is that I had actually recently been at a university. And I knew absolutely nothing how to do this. I pointed out to my boss, my vice president, I said, you know, this strikes me as an adult job. This is something that like a mature person would do with gray hair, and I'm still a kid. I have no business doing this. And he said, you know, we understand, but we need you to do this. And so I kind of did what Ronnie did. I just said, let's go. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. Now, I took a lot of abuse for this, for being very, very young and being thrown onto the management team. In fact, at one point, I was about maybe now 2 years into my career. I'm running Oracle University. I'm at a cocktail party, and an Oracle cocktail party, and my vice president introduces me to an Oracle customer. And he's like a mature man. And he said, this is Liz. She runs Oracle University. She's in charge of the human resource development for the company worldwide. And this man does not even hold back. He just does a noticeable flinch as he looks at me, and because he sees I'm really young in what seems like a big job, and my boss comes in with support. And I can see, I'm going to get air cover here for this. And he comes in, and my boss, with this great big smile on his face, he just said, "Oh, yeah, Liz, she has a big job. She's not particularly well qualified for it." And then he just looks at me and kind of starts to laugh. And so I see I get no air cover. And so I respond with the only thing I know how to say is, I'm like, who wants a job they're qualified for? There'd be absolutely nothing to learn. And it was just my comeback, trying to save some basic dignity in that situation. And it was like my boss kind of looked at me and said, "Okay, game on." And I think for the next dozen years, I never once had a job I was qualified. Not a single one of them did I know how to do. But as Ronnie said, I just learned to be a rookie for life. That's a little bit about my transition, but that's not the important part of the transition. The important part is what I noticed when I got thrown into management as a kid. Because I didn't really know what I was doing, so I looked around and I watched what the grown-ups were doing. And remember this sea of people that I ended up in? Really smart, really driven, and sometimes, most of the time, nice. I noticed something about intelligence. I noticed that not every one of these really, really smart people ended up creating really smart teams. See, smarts, if you have it, doesn't always create smarts in people around you. So have you ever seen a really, really smart, brilliant person walk into a room and drain the intelligence out of a room? Like it's almost like the collective IQ goes down when that person comes in. Have you ever seen a really, really smart, capable person walk in and everyone else just sort of takes a step back, maybe hides a little bit, holds back? And I noticed that some of these leaders were brilliant, but they used their intelligence as a weapon. Maybe sometimes just to prove that they were the smartest person in the room. And I saw people cower around them. All these other brilliant people that I worked with, I saw, wow, why do they hold back around certain leaders? But yet I ended up calling these leaders diminishers. Later, as I was making sense of this experience that I had, but I noticed a different type of leader, equally brilliant, equally driven, but they used their intelligence in a very different way. They used their intelligence in a way that fostered intelligence and capability in other people. Like when they walked in the room, something very different happened. People kind of sat up, leaned forward, ideas started to flow. People were at their best around these kind of leaders. I came to call them multipliers. And as Mark said, that's what we're going to talk about. How do you lead in a way that not only do you bring your very best to the work that you're doing, but how do you do it in the way that everyone around you brings their very best as well? So we're going to start with just this idea of leader as the multiplier to their team. I'm going to go back and give it a start again because I think we're just a little slow on the volume, so let's try it now. Yeah.
What is the fate of the smart and the talented? The corporate world finds smart, talented people and promotes them into management. But many of these leaders never look beyond their own capability to see the full genius on their team. Have you ever worked around someone who made you feel smarter and more capable? We call these leaders multipliers. Have you ever worked around someone who made you question your own intelligence? We call these leaders diminishers. They may hire smart people, but they quickly put other people in the background. They are smart leaders, but they shut down the smarts of others. Diminishers come at such a high cost, they waste talent and intellect that sits right in front of them. Organizations can't afford diminishers. Multipliers come from all walks of life, from corporate boardrooms to our school's classrooms. They are leaders like Lut Ziob, Bill Campbell, Wangari Maathai, and many more. These people are real, and the way they lead can be learned and it can be developed. What would happen in your organization if you operated more like a multiplier? Imagine what is possible with access to all the intelligence that sits in your organization.
This is the idea we're going to play with this morning. As you were listening to that video, who had names of coaches come to mind? Names of bosses, perhaps? Colleagues? Maybe even like Little League coaches? Pop Warner coaches come to mind. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to ask you to think about two very different kinds of leaders. I want you to go back through your past. You can go to sports. You can go to the workplace. You can go to even maybe into your social group. And I want you to identify someone who was a diminisher to you and maybe to others. They're surrounded by capability and smart people, but yet somehow progress isn't getting made. Things aren't getting done. And then I also want you to scan back, and I want you to identify someone who is a multiplier to you, someone around whom you were at your very, very best. I'm going to give you some time to think about that. We're going to do a little writing about that, and I want to tell you about 4 different multiplier leaders that I've had a chance to get to know. I got to study and write about so many. I picked a few that all come from sort of business and athletics, including this first one. This is Matt McCauley. Matt McCauley is the former CEO of Gymboree. You guys know Gymboree? Yeah, kids' clothes, little matching, cute little outfits. Matt, he was a pole vaulter in college. In fact, he was the California State champion pole vaulter in college. He left college. He went to work for Payless Shoes in Kansas City, and he worked in inventory management. That's a transition. That's a transition. He works in inventory management. He then goes from Kansas City to San Francisco to work for the Gap in inventory management. And then he goes to work just a couple blocks away from the Gap's headquarters in San Francisco to Gymboree in inventory management. The guy knows inventory management. But he's analytical, and he has really interesting ideas. And pretty soon, they put him in as the president of the company. They're about $1 billion publicly traded company at the time, and $1 billion in sales. And then he becomes the CEO. He's 33 years old. 33 years old. He's the CEO of this company doing $1 billion in revenue every year. And he goes to the board of this publicly traded company, and as a newly minted CEO, he says, I think we could double our earnings per share, which for a business is kind of the ultimate measure of their profitability, how much profit they can distribute across their shareholders. At the time, earnings per share for the company is 59 cents a share. Now, there's people here who probably work in finance or who are business majors. They know that most chief financial officers would be really excited for maybe 20% year-over-year growth in earnings per share. In fact, they'd probably do a backflip for 20%. Matt goes to the board and he says, I think we could double this number. What do you think the board says to their 33-year-old CEO? They laughed at him. They literally laughed at him. Matt doesn't think it's funny. He doesn't think this is impossible. He goes back to his management team and he says, I have a mission impossible goal. Here's my mission impossible goal. My mission impossible goal is is getting to $1 a share this fiscal year, nearly doubling that. And then he asks this question. He said, what would we need to do as a company? What would we need to do as a management team to get to $1 a share this fiscal year? Soon, everyone on his management team starts to think, what could they do? Now, he shared a few ideas that actually came from his experience in inventory management. If we change the way we stock our products and warehouse our products, we can increase store profitability, which will affect the regional profitability and drop to the bottom line. He shares just a few ideas to get him started. What would we need to get to do $1 a share? Soon, everyone on his management team has a mission impossible goal. At the end of that year, Matt got to go back to the board and give him the good news. He got to hold the earnings call to announce to all the Wall Street analysts, and he got to announce to the whole company they got to $1.19 a share in a single year, blowing out their wildest expectations. What does Matt do next? He goes back to the board And he says, this next year, I think we can get to $2 a share. What do you think the now grateful board says to Matt? Let's go? What do? They laugh at him again because they think, oh, no, you already got like all the big gains. You already picked the low-hanging fruit here. Like, we're done. They're looking for incremental improvement. Matt's not looking for incremental improvement. He sees what's possible, so he goes to his management team and he says, I have a mission impossible goal. I have another mission impossible goal for us. And he says, my mission impossible goal is $2 a share. And the same kind of mission impossible thinking cascades through his team. Everyone has a goal. When I went in to interview a bunch of people at Gymboree to understand what was happening during these years, I get into the they take me to the cafeteria. I go to the soda machine, and on the side of the soda machine is like with clear packing tape around some piece of paper, here is the mission impossible goal for cafeteria operations. Everyone's got this mission impossible goal at the end of that year, $2.15 a share. He gets to announce it to Wall Street, back to the board. What does Matt do next? So I got to tell you a little bit about Matt when he was in college and when he was vaulting. He said, I've always been fascinated with what's humanly possible. Always just wanted to know what is humanly possible. He said, when I practiced, I always set 2 bars. The first bar was what I could clear, which was, 17 feet and some inches. He said, but in practice, I set a second bar. And the second bar, I couldn't clear, but it was the world record. Maybe like 20 feet, some inches at the time. He said, I couldn't clear that bar, but I just wanted to see it to know what was humanly possible. And he took the same kind of approach at work. He goes back to his team with a $3 a share mission impossible goal that year. What would you predict? Kind of running out of paper here. He has a $3 a share mission impossible goal that year. They miss. They hit $2.67 a share. I'm sure there's some people in that board room who are saying, yeah, okay. We're now down to incremental. See, we knew you could only do this so long. And so as a researcher, this is where I'm really, this is a fun story. That's nice. I'm interested what's going to happen right there. Because what would you predict they do the next year? I'd probably predict $2.70. The next year, $3.21 a share. And I went back to the people who worked for him that day when I went and was stopping by the soda machine. I was talking to people who worked for him saying, tell me about that year. What happened then? And why didn't you give up? Oh, and they said, we weren't worried about failing at this because this was a mission impossible goal. And if we made it, we were heroes. This was amazing. And if we missed, they said we weren't too worried about missing because if we missed, they said all that proved was that Matt was crazy. And we were perfectly willing to entertain that scenario. Okay, what role did Matt McCauley play on his team and in his company? So, I should say, you heard from these incredible Hall of Famers. You heard them. I'm not doing all the talking this morning. So this is going to be a conversation. So when I actually ask you what you think, I want you to just, and for those of you who are blurters and have a hard time staying quiet in sessions like these, just let loose here, okay? So what role did he play? Yeah, well, a multiplier, and specifically, what did he do? His job was to set the bar. He didn't even know how they were going to clear it, but he asked the question. What do we need to do? Okay, that is one of the leaders. I've got 4. Now, here's what I really want you to do is, in some ways, I want you to ignore all 4 of them, maybe 3 of them, because what do I really want you to be thinking about? I want you to be thinking about your leaders and the people who've had this impact on you. And I want you to be thinking, what did they do? Kay Yao. Who knows who Kay Yao is? Basketball coach, NC State. She passed a number of years ago, tragically lost to cancer, also from University of Maryland, athletic director there. Famed, winning coach. We talked to one of her assistant coaches who served alongside, coached alongside her for years. This is measured in decades that they worked together. She said, in all the games, the days, the practices that I have worked with Kay Yao, she said, never once was it about her. Never once. It was always about what could she do to create top performance in her players. It just wasn't about her, this famed coach. Magic Johnson. For many people, he's one of their favorite legendary basketball players. For those of you who maybe are after his time aren't familiar, of course, played for the Lakers, led the U.S. team to Olympic gold. Now, of course, head of basketball operations for the Lakers today. He's an incredible business leader as well. So Magic had this experience when he was a young man that shaped the way that he led. And this, of course, isn't when he's Magic Johnson. This is when he's a high school kid named, Irving Johnson Jr. So he's this kid, but he's a total phenom at a very young age. Could you imagine being his coach? What would it be like to coach a player like this? His coach said something to him, affected him. The coach said, so he's a kid growing up in Michigan. And this is a picture of him from his basketball days, playing for the Vikings. And his coach said, Irvin, every time you get the ball, I want you to pass it. Who here played basketball as well as football? Where are my basketball players? What did his coach say to him? Every time you get the ball, I want you to shoot. It's exactly what his coach said. Irvin, every time you get the ball, I want you to take the shot. And so he does. And he makes a lot of points. And of course, the coach loves it because he's this coachable kid. He's doing exactly what he's been asked to do. And the other players love it because they're undefeated. They win every game. And, they'll win, let's say, with 54 points, and Irvin would have scored 52 of those points, like 50 on a bad day. And it's going great, game after game, win after win, and then there's just one brick game. There's nothing special about this game. Game's over. They're celebrating. It's come to the end. All the players, this is late 70s, are leaving, maybe even mid-70s. They're leaving the gymnasium with their parents, these high school kids. And Irvin notices not the players, he notices the parents, the faces of the parents, who of course came there to see what? Yeah, they came there to see their kid score, their kid play, their kid take a shot. And it really imprinted him. And he said he made a decision as a young man that he would use his God-given talent to help everyone on the team be a better player. And it was actually this orientation, and for him it was a reorientation that earned him this nickname of Magic. It was given to him by a Michigan sports writer who said, like, this guy is magic. He raises the level of play of every team that he ever plays on. And I think this really encapsulates this idea of leading like a multiplier, using your own intellect and talent and capability, not necessarily to be the best one on team, but to raise the level of play for everyone that you work with. Okay, and then we've got one more, and Bill Campbell. Bill Campbell, one of the things Bill said when he led Intuit Software Company, which of course you met Brad Wednesday night, who's the current CEO of this. I remember him saying to me, he goes, Liz, I learned to lead the engineers differently. Instead of telling the engineers what to do, I learned to define for them a problem and to let their minds go at it. He said they have different minds than I have. We're going to talk a little bit about the way Bill leads today. I want to just share, I was very lucky to get some video footage of Bill talking about the way he leads. I'm going to share a few of them today. Here we go. Yeah, we'll do it one more time.
Being a multiplier is crucially important, not just for Silicon Valley companies, but for every company that there is out there. Really can where the leadership has to take advantage of the rank and file. I mean, if you have great ideas that emerge from the organization, your company just obviously is going to get better. I talk about it in terms of management practices because I do think that where it starts is in that executive room, where you can, if the CEO can do it with the management team is going to feel that way, feel empowered, and they're going to be able to do the same thing with their staffs, and it will cascade down in an organization. It's the way you get the best ideas.
Okay, and we're going to talk about how do you not only bring your own best ideas, but how do you get the best ideas out of everyone around you? Have you been thinking about two different leaders that you've experienced, two different coaches? Here's what I want you to do. On the front, can I borrow this for a moment? You've got a set of materials here, handouts. There's something that looks like this. There's 4 boxes. Would you grab a pencil or a pen? And I'm going to ask you to answer the questions in those 4 boxes. We're going to take a minute or two to have people gather their thoughts, and then we're going to talk about it. First, I want you to think about that diminisher leader. And the first question is, what did he or she do? You know, what was their playbook, in essence? If I had a camera following around this manager or coach, what would I notice? Describe the behavior. The second question is a little bit tricky. Here's why. I'm asking you how much of your intelligence, knowledge, skills, talent, insights, capability, how much of your intelligence was this boss getting from you? Here's why it's a tricky question. Well, the non-tricky part is I want you to write a number down between 0 and 100. So 0 is none, 100 is all of your intellect, capability, and ideas. Here's the tricky part. I am not asking you how hard you were working. This is not about effort. I'm asking you how much of your mental capability was being utilized based on the way he or she led. Now, if you've ever had a job where you were working really hard but actually underutilized, you know the difference, don't you? What's it like to be overworked but underutilized? And feel free to do this one just for therapeutic reasons alone. Overworked and underutilized, it's draining, frustrating. Okay, so you know the differences. Those are 2 questions for diminisher, 2 questions for the multiplier leader. Take a minute to gather your thoughts. Okay. I want you to tell me, so we just did a little study, and I want you to tell me what it is you noticed. So you're thinking about these diminishing leaders. You got to reflect on your own experience, hear the experience of 7 or so other people. What did you notice that these diminishers tend to do? And I want you, we're not going to pass microphones or anything. We're just going to practice the ancient art of shouting. Which is my favorite way of learning. So you're just going to shout this out, okay? You guys know how to do this? Okay, what did you notice diminishers tend to do? They shut you out. They suppress conversation. They doubt you. And well done on the shouting. Thank you. They don't listen. They control. And you know, didn't Steve say something interesting? How it's such a human need to control? Sometimes control gets a bad rap because, oh, that person's controlling. We have a deep, deep human need to be in control. Where does it go wrong? When my need for control extends beyond myself and starts to move to other people. Yeah, these leaders tend to be controlling. It's the orientation they tend to operate under, as opposed to putting control in other people's hands, putting other people in charge, putting other people in control of their own performance. Okay, what else did you notice these diminishers tend to do? They exhibit fear, and they stir it, don't they? Yeah, they use scare tactics, threats, intimidation. And I don't know the world of physiology the way that you know this, that maybe you can get your bodies to do their best work under these conditions, but can you get your minds to do their best work? There is so much research on this that says when we experience anxiety and fear and stress, that we can't access the part of our brain that does critical thinking, manages trade-offs, processes dilemmas, that our ability to do that kind of thinking shuts down. What else did you notice that these diminishing leaders do? They laugh at you? Oh, they lack EQ, or they laugh at you too, yeah. They lack EQ. Yeah, they're not, yeah, they're self-serving or just simply self-oriented. Their orientation, as I looked at all the characteristics of these diminishing leaders, their orientation tends to be on self. They're ego-driven. They place blame on others. Usually not personable, and I'm so glad you said usually, because did any of you happen, as you thought back on this diminisher, did any of you have a nice diminisher? Like someone you really liked, someone who liked you, someone who asked you how your dad was. How are you doing? And they were actually nice, but yet they had a diminishing effect. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to the sort of nice diminisher in just a few minutes. Okay. How much of your capability did they get? We're going to calculate an average across the averages of these groups. So if your group didn't calculate an average, don't make something up. We'll just pass. I need someone who will calculate an average of these averages. We're going to throw about, 8 to 10 numbers at you. You got it? Vincent or whoever else? Yeah, we can do 2. Okay, so first one is 40%, 55%, 30%, 39, 46, 40, 50, 30, 33 and a half. Okay, now, young man, the fact that you got something to the right of the decimal place really impresses me. But the fact that it's 33, I'm a little suspicious of the, yeah, okay. Anyone else have one we want to add to that mix? 10. 10 is such an interesting number on a scale of 0 to 100, and it's a really interesting average. Yeah. So as my friend, whose name is Vincent, is calculating this average, I have another question for you. I want you to think about that diminishing leader, coach, boss, whatever. What did he or she assume to be true? What did they believe? Now, you can spend a lot of time developing leadership skills and doing the right thing, but really it all flows from the mindsets that we hold as leaders. What is the belief that they were operating in? Their core assumption was they believed that they were always right, that they had the best ideas, that you were going to believe everything that they did. Ah, interesting. Yeah, like my way will be your way. My experience and what it takes to succeed, to close the sale, to win, to innovate, my way should be your way. Okay? How much capability? You got anything for us there, Vincent? Yeah, what is it? 38%. Anything to the right of that decimal point? See, that's a researcher trick. You just put something there and people think you did your math. Okay, 38%. Now, how much? So it's about a third, a little more than a third of your available capability. How much were you wanting? How much were you willing to give? This is not a trick question. You say 90, you're like, I'm going to hold back just a little bit. Just a little bit, a buffer there. How much were you willing to give to that diminisher? Okay, now this may sound like a tricky question. It's not intended to be a tricky question. When you showed up for work that day, for practice that day, for game that day, how much were you willing to give? It's 100% for most people. Now, I study leadership. A lot of people say, oh, that I have this like expertise in leadership. I consider myself a great student of leadership. But you know what I've developed a little bit of expertise around? You know what I've come to understand really, really well? I get to study leadership and teach leadership all around the world. Here's what I've learned. I've learned a lot about followership and contributorship is really what I've learned. And I've learned that people all across the world, this crosses continents, it crosses cultures, it crosses companies, it crosses so many things that people come to work every day desperately wanting to give 100%. Yeah, I can't find a lot of people who will tell me about these bosses that were using a fraction of their capability and say, yeah, it was a good job. There was not a lot expected of me. It was a good gig, because these leaders they're still paying you 100%. But they're underutilizing people. I hear people who say being underutilized is frustrating. It's painful. It's draining. It's exhausting. Why is it exhausting to be underutilized? Like, why is this not a good gig? I once asked that question, and it was a very large room, a woman way in the back, and she yells. She really appreciated the whole shouting thing. She yells from the back, because I say, why is it exhausting to be underutilized? And she said, because it's a lot of work to act this stupid. Yeah, and what happens inside organizations and on teams when people come to work wanting to give 100%, but encountering bosses who only allow you to give a third of that? Or maybe they're not disallowing you. Maybe they just are so busy with their own ideas and their own stuff that they just don't see what you're capable of giving. But what gets built in this little gap here, or this great big gap? What happens? For those of you who've been out in the workforce for a few years, what happens right here? It's a breeding ground for resistance, frustration, average mediocrity, apathy, complacency, disengagement. That's what happens here. You know, when managers say, oh, our employees are disengaged, I don't tend to go looking for problems with the employees. Where do I go looking? I look at management, because people really want to give everything they have and then get a growth dividend from getting smarter and actually more capable in the process, getting stronger mentally. Okay, so let's turn our attention to the multiplier leader. What did you notice that multipliers tend to do? They empower, they trust, they facilitate thought. They facilitate thought. That's such a beautiful way of saying that. Like at work, we've got to be able to bring our own thoughts, but there's incredible power when you say, I'm going to be a facilitator of good thoughts. Yeah. They're transparent. They value you. They invest in you. Bill Campbell invested in other people. He invested in other people. What else? Positive vibe. Okay. You guys have done a very good job capturing half of this story. Half of this story. So when I got done writing the manuscript for this book, and I sent it off to my publisher at HarperCollins, and my publisher wrote back and she said, wow. She said, these are not cupcakes and kisses kinds of leaders, are they? Yes, they empower, they invest, they support, they like positive vibes, all of this. It's kind of a table stake. Because what do they do with this? See, I think the only reason, there's a lot of companies who are trying to be great places to work, you know, attract good talent. Like, why do you create a great place to work? Why do you create a great vibe? Is it just to create a team of happy people? Like, why do you create that environment? You create a great place to work for really one reason. So people can do great work. So yeah, these multiplier leaders have this kind of, some people might call it a soft side. But what's on the hard side? You know, my publisher said, wow, these leaders really have a hard edge. Yeah, they challenge you. Matt McCauley, like, no, we can do better than this. I know you were looking for infinite growth. Like, I have a mission impossible goal for us. They challenge. They have high expectations. What kind of feedback do they give? This room knows what this is like. Yeah, I love what the author Kim Scott calls radical candor. It's a great book about how do you give people not feedback that looks like judgment of whether I'm telling you you're stupid or smart. How do I give people information they need to increase their performance? How do I let people know what's expected of them? How do I hold people accountable for doing their very, very best work? Okay, how much of your capability did the multiplier get? Vincent, can we come at you with numbers again? Okay, what do you got for us? 85, 91, 95, 92, 95, 100, 95, 96. Okay, as he's calculating an average, what, in contrast, did your multiplier believe? If you could get inside his or her head, what is the assumption that they're operating under? They believed that, yeah, together we're better, that you're capable. Okay, that you're capable doesn't sound like a very sophisticated management philosophy, does it? But what happens when you show up believing that the people around you want to give 100% and are capable? You lead in actually profoundly different ways. Vincent, just shout out when you've got a number for us, or 93%. What does this tell us? And feel free to make the simplest of observations here. It's better. Multipliers are better. I like this. Yeah, you know, yeah, like, and then why isn't that 100%? Yeah, I found the numbers I found in the research, 95% and I think it's 48%. Done very, very conservatively, you know, with blind and control variables. Yeah, they get more than twice, in some cases 3 times people's available capability. You know, the question I like to ask managers is how much of your people's capability you're actually getting, and what it would take for you to get more. You know, what we're going to do for the rest of the afternoon, or the rest of the morning is we're going to look at what can you do to contribute everything that you have to at work. But then when you're in a leadership role, whether it's a formal management position, some of you will be CEOs, some of you will be managers, some of you will be project managers, some of you will rise up and be informal team leaders. How do you lead so that everyone around you is at their best? Okay, so let me share with you what I found in this research. And I'm going to try to do it pretty quick because I want to get to what I think is far more interesting than this. I found that these leaders operate from fundamentally different mindsets, and it's what drives their behavior. The multiplier operates from the assumption that no one's going to figure it out without me, whereas the multiplier operates from the assumption that people are capable, people are smart, and will figure it out. And they do a number of things very differently. These are the 5, and you've got this here in your handouts, the 5 things they do very differently. The first is how they manage talent. The diminisher is a great recruiter of talent. They find smart people, talented people, capable people, and they bring them on their team, but the problem is they tend to underutilize them. You all know coaches who are great talent scouts, but then turn out to be terrible coaches. These people still exist in the workplace. There will people who will hire you because you're capable and talented and brilliant, but you want to go work for someone who actually knows how to use that once you're on board. So the diminisher tends to acquire resources, human resources. The multiplier, they utilize people's genius, their talent. What I call their native genius, the thing that people do easily and freely. Second difference is the climate they create, the work environment, or the culture, as we often call this. The diminisher tends to be, I call it a tyrant. They're not always the yelling, chair-throwing, hot-headed leader. Often they're very quietly tyrannical, but they create an environment of stress. Whereas the multiplier leader, they create an environment of safety. And I don't mean this limited to the way we talk about like safety on college campuses, sort of emotional safety, safe places. They create intellectual safety. What does intellectual safety look like? If you feel like you've got intellectual safety on a team, what are you able to do? You're able to share any idea you have. You're able to expand thinking. You're able to offer big ideas, take risks. You're able to disagree. You're able to represent a diverse point of view. You're able to disagree with the boss. They create safety for people to do their best thinking and their best work. The third difference is the way they set direction. The diminisher tends to be a know-it-all. They set direction based on what they know, what they see, what their experience. Like, my way is the way. Whereas the multiplier tends not to be a know-it-all. They tend to be a challenger. Like Mac McCauley, like, the thing I know is that we can do this hard thing, or we can do something amazing, but I don't know how we're going to get there. You know, what do we need to do to get to $1 a share this fiscal year? They ask questions. They invite people into uncomfortable spaces. In fact, there are leaders like that VP I had who said, hey, Liz, you know what? We need someone to go start a university, and we're going to ask you to do that. They invite people to do things they've never done before. And then they put a little safety net under them. The fourth is the way they make decisions. The diminisher tends to be the decision maker. They make good decisions. They often make fast decisions, and they tend to make inner circle decisions. And then they spend their time then selling their decisions to other people. But what's it like when somebody comes to you and wants to ask for your buy-in on a decision you know has already been made? Versus the multiplier who operates more like a debate maker. They know on the vital decisions, they need people to weigh in. Like Bill Campbell says, we've got to make a really, really important decision here. And you know what? We're going to spend, what did he say, like Monday, Tuesday? Bill, it's funny, Bill had shared that same story with me. Like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we are going to ferociously debate this decision. But then when we decide, what are we going to do? We're going to execute this as a team. Why did he get rid of the naysayer? Wasn't on the team. See, he brought up the debate on Thursday. When was Bill saying we're debating? 3 days. Like, this is your chance to disagree and to err, but then we drive together. They lead their team in this ferocious, hard-hitting debate that ends up unifying a team. The last thing is the way they get things done. They drive for results. The diminisher tends to be the micromanager. The multiplier tends to be an investor. They put other people in charge. They give other people majority vote on issues. And they give people ownership, but what comes with that ownership? Accountability. Because we grow not when we just get a chance to participate, we grow when we get put in charge and held accountable for things. And we find there's this very significant difference. I don't consider this the really interesting part of the research. When I started this, here's my confessions of a social science researcher. I started this clearly seeing these diminishing leaders and multiplier leaders, almost like I could walk through the halls of a corporation and separate people, like, oh, diminisher, 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 multiplier, multiplier, oh, diminisher. And then I came to see something really interesting in the research. Do you know when you're watching a movie and you get to the part of the movie where there's a plot twist and you realize that the good guys might be the bad guys? Like, oh, wow, this is more complicated. This is interesting. There's a plot twist because what I realized is most of the diminishing that's happening inside of our corporations is, you know, and maybe on our athletic fields too, is not coming from the tyrannical, narcissistic, bully diminisher. Like, we love to write articles about these people. These people are kind of in the news. They're interesting. Most of it is coming from the good guys. Most of it is coming from well-meaning leaders, bosses, coaches, parents who think they're doing the right things. Sometimes following very popular management practices, a lot of them actually really nice, but yet diminishing. So here's what we're going to do. Before we take our break, we're going to explore this question of what might we be doing with the very best of intentions that actually shuts people down. Now, I've got 9 little scenarios that I want to share, but I have a feeling you probably already know this. What is it that well-intended leaders, coaches, parents, and feel free to include yourself in this, do that ends up actually causing people not to step up and give their best, but actually causes people to kind of step back? Do you know any of these? try to motivate through criticism, or just to motivate. Woo, woo, like let me motivate you. See, I think the best leaders don't motivate others. I think the best leaders acknowledge that people are already motivated. And my job is to just not demotivate you. Like you came to this already wanting to win and do your best. Okay, any other ways that you could end up diminishing with the very best of intentions? Yeah, right here. Oh, with humor? Oh my gosh, I was voted class clown of my high school graduating class, so that one hurts. That one hurts. How could we, with the best of intentions, diminish people through humor? Yeah, my kids have taught me this one. Sometimes jokes can be hurtful. Any others? One more hypothesis right here. Yeah, when we try to prevent people from failing, what is it that we tell ourselves? What's the narrative we tell ourselves about our benevolent intentions? I want them to feel good. I want them to be successful. So I'm going to intervene to help ensure they're successful. What actually happens when leaders do that? Yeah, you are stunting somebody else's growth. Yeah. In some ways, and you're deceiving them too. We find this in the workplace a lot where employees are like, hey, I'm doing great, and the boss is like, no, you're not, because you're having to get a rescue every time. Okay, let me share a set of pictures. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at these pictures. I'm going to share 9 sets of pictures, and I want you to just pick one. One thing that you think you might be vulnerable. Not vulnerable on the receiving end, but vulnerable on the leading end, okay? And they're all, each of these is a column in that spreadsheet, and you can go ahead and, you know, you might put a tick mark by things that you think might be a vulnerability, but in the end, like 5 or 10 minutes from now, I want you to have one of these circled. Like, what might be my vulnerability? I'm going to share a few of my own vulnerabilities. The first is, one of my vulnerabilities is I am an idea guy. And an idea guy, we are creative, innovative thinkers. We love ideas. We come to work like, hey, what about this? And have you thought about this? And we consider this. Maybe we should experiment with this. And it's not that we think our ideas are better. We think our ideas are going to do what? I'm going to toss out a bunch of ideas, and it will inspire. Other people will start to jump in with their ideas. Like, so we see ourselves as seeding ideas. What actually happens around the idea guy? Yeah, it's stifling. We tend to rely on these people, and other people spend their time like this. It's like a day of work. Like, okay, he's got me doing this. Okay, now he's got me doing that. Now I'm over here, and we make no progress, so we end up just staying put. And we think, okay, well, instead of coming up with ideas, maybe I'll just walk down the hall to my boss's office. Like, he's a fountain of ideas, and that fountain goes off every hour, so I'll just get my ideas there. People can become idea lazy around leaders who are idea rich. Okay, what about the leader who's always on? I mean, if you're always on, you probably know this already. Like, these are people who are always engaged, always contributing, always something to say, always present. They kind of, in some ways, are charismatic. They've got a big presence. And of course, they think that their energy is infectious. Like, woo! These are people who, like, whoop up a group. Woo! Woo! Okay, what's it like to work around the always-on boss or colleague? Yeah, you're like, man, I don't got that much energy. Yeah, or like, you're killing me. You're killing me with this energy. What do you do, particularly those of you who are at work, in a workplace? What do you do when the always-on colleague or boss comes walking down the hallway towards your office? What do you do? Perk up or turn your back? Yeah, most people say, I avoid eye contact at this point. Like, because you don't want to make eye contact with these people, because once you activate them, they're like a motion sensing light. Like, once you activate them, it's really hard to get that thing to go off. And they tend to drain other people, or they take up so much space. People would be like, man, I'd say something in this meeting if there were any oxygen left in the room. Because they do, these people expand like a gas. and take up a lot of space. Okay, the rescuer. They think, hey, I'm going to save the day. And, you know, they think they're helping, but sometimes we're at our most helpful when we don't help other people. You know, instead of saving the day, when we save the day, it leaves other people feeling more like this. Because what's it like to need the rescue? Or people, it's like a learned helplessness. We learn to wait for the rescue. What about the pace setter? This is the leader who is leading by example. How many times have you been told to lead by example? Dozens, hundreds? What happens when the boss is the example? I'm going to be the example for getting in early, staying late. I'm going to be the example for hard work. I'm going to be the example for customer orientation, customer intimacy, meeting with customers. I'm going to be the example for cost control, for revenue growth, whatever it is. I'm going to be the example. Other people will notice what I'm doing and they will. But do they? Okay, I'm a mom of 4. My youngest, his name is Joshua. He's 15 now. He's actually on the cross-country team at school. It took him a lot of years to want to really run again. Let me tell you about what it was like when he was a little dude. He loved to run. And every morning, like in 2nd grade, all of 3rd grade, every morning was, Mom, race you to the bus stop. Race you to the bus stop. And why do you think he wanted to race Mom rather than Dad? Yeah, because I let him win? Okay, so I would do this in mom mode. See, now grandma mode is let them win. But mom mode is let them win sometimes. See, dads don't always understand that. My husband will just like, okay, it's a race. And I'm like, let the kid win every now and then. He goes, what? He's got to learn to be fast. My husband, by the way, played running back at BYU with Jim McMahon. So it was fun. He was a little bit earlier to take. So my husband's really fast. But see, mom kind of lets him win sometimes. Or most of the time, we keep it a close race. Every now and then, I would forget that I was mom. And he challenged me to a race, and I would think, he's my 4th child, and I think, wow, I'm getting older. My kids are growing up. He's the only one I can still beat. And so what do I do on those days where I'm having midlife thoughts, like this is the last kid? Like this is maybe the last person on the planet that I run faster than. Okay, what do I do? See, you guys aren't there yet, but I want you to mark this moment in time because you will look back and one day you will have this thought. And it will be just like me. I'm like, oh, and so what do? I go tearing down to the bus stop. I get there first. I'm like, you know, I look back and what is Joshua, this little boy who loves to run, what's he doing? It's a saunter, right? And what does he say when he gets to the bus stop? I think it tells us a lot about what happens here and how we can end up diminishing. What does he say when he gets to the bus stop? Now, to nail this, you've got to nail like 8-year-old boy logic. What does he say? That's not fair, okay? That's like 6-year-old. You're in the ballpark, 6-year-old logic. You got to up the sophistication just a little bit. What does he say? 8-year-old boy logic. I'll never be faster. That's like 13. Oh, why even try? Yeah, kind of 10. You sort of like give up temporarily on life. What does he say? 8-year-old boy logic. You guys can do this. What is it? You cheated? That is 7 for sure. 8-year-old boy logic. Ha, 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 ha. He says, and it's not that direct. What he says when he gets to the bus stop is he's like, Mom, we weren't racing that time. Do you have it? You knew it, you knew it, you knew it. See, we don't like losing, and when the boss or the leader is constantly the one out there as the example, and we know we can't keep, what do? Speed up or do we give up? Most people tend to hold back. So, like, you're out there setting the pace. What are the people around you doing? More like this. They're watching you do your thing. And then it starts to look like this with the leader being the white lab here. And what are the people around you saying? Like, I'd love to help. Like, you know, remember, what do we want to give 100%? Like, next time you lap me, let me know how I can help. I'd love to contribute. But people are watching you. I always know to look out for this when somebody says, oh, this person, they're amazing. when anyone on my team says, oh yeah, my boss Liz, she's amazing. What does that say? Liz is amazing or Liz is diminishing? I'm suspicious that it might be a diminishing moment. Like people are watching you do your thing. Okay, what about the rapid response? This is the person who is on it. Yeah, okay, so it's a great question. Why shouldn't you? Do you have to hold back? I'm going to translate your question into something more pointed and maybe even sharper. So to be a good leader, do I have to hold back? What do you think? Everything in moderation, he says. What else do you say? Yeah. It starts to be a numbers game. Because, yeah, as a contributor, you want to give your very best. What happens when you're now the boss? And you're giving your best, but everyone else is falling behind. Can you redefine what your best is? Sometimes it involves putting other people out in the lead. Let me share a hiking, because I'm going to go back to my same son, Josh. So our family is 3 kids, all very carefully planned, spaced 2 years apart, and then a bonus child at the end. Like I call him the buy 3, get 1 free family planning package. And so there's a kind of a, don't tell him that, because I don't think he totally is aware of that yet. And so there's like a 4.5-year gap. And so we're kind of an outdoorsy, adventurous family. We're always taking the kids hiking. And so, you know, mom, dad, the 3 older kids hiking fast. And then we have the little guy. And what do you think happens? The little guy starts to drag. And then he gets that he's like the little guy. And so he goes even slower. And so what do? We're like, Josh, hurry up, hurry up. Come on, Josh, keep up, keep up, keep up. How often do you think it works? Never. Never, never, never works. You know what does work? Some of you know this. Put him in the lead. And then when we put him in the lead, does it mean like now everyone has to go slower? What happens when we put the little guy in the lead? And we say, Josh, you set the pace. We'll keep up with you. He goes faster. And sometimes I find I struggle to keep up with them. It's reorienting yourself. One of the ways that I think sometimes people misinterpret the multipliers concept is that as a leader, you don't get to bring all your ideas and your capability, that you become like some neutral facilitator of the group, like, oh, I don't know what we should do. What do you think? Can you lead? And I think Magic Johnson is the great example of this. Like, this guy didn't reorient himself and say, okay, I'm going to not take the shots. This guy took a lot of shots. What he did is that he focused on helping everyone else play at their best. Like, he didn't lead by cheering the team on from the sidelines or always passing. How do I play at my best, but invite everyone else to play at your best? These are some of the accidental diminishing tendencies. These are the things that trick us up because we think we're doing the right thing for others. But yet it doesn't always work that way. Okay, I want you to keep thinking about what your vulnerability might be. I've got a big vulnerability around idea guy for sure. I've also been told I have a little bit of a rapid responder thing. The rapid responder, they like fast movement, solving problems. It's see a bear, shoot a bear kind of approach to thing. You know you're a rapid responder if like someone sent you a text, you clear a text. Someone sent you an email, like you're clearing out your inbox constantly. You think you're creating this agility. Like we're a team, we can attack, we can solve problems. What happens when the boss responds to everything quickly? What do other people learn to do? They're like, well, I'll just let you do it. And suddenly these people are working so hard and they can't figure out why other people aren't moving fast or with agility. Optimism. One of the things I do is I study optimism. To be in senior leadership roles, you need high degrees of optimism. Sometimes just to get out of bed in the morning, you need high levels of optimism. I am a massive optimist. Like every performance review I've ever had said can-do attitude. Why do they put me in charge of like building that university? Because I'd be like, oh, I've never done this before. I guess I'll figure that out. This all seems possible. We can do it. What did Steve say? We can do hard things. What happens when the boss gets it in his or her head, hey, we can do hard things, we got this, we can do this. Woo! It's going to be so great. There's a happy ending here. Yeah, you start to feel like you can't fail, right? Why did Matt set this up as Mission Impossible? What did he do for his team? He gave him an incredible gift. He said, I'm going to give you a big goal to go chase, but I'm also going to legitimize the possibility that we might not make it, which actually enables people to do their best work. Sometimes optimists, they see the victory, but what do they overlook? That behind the victory is this. I've learned to say to the people who work for me, what we're doing is hard, and we're going to struggle with this, and we might even fail at this. And it's funny, because once they hear those words are like magic words, which is like, Liz has not lost her tether to reality. She gets it. She gets what we're doing is hard, maybe even miserable, and so then we're like, okay, now I'll move forward. Because when the leader only sees the upside, it gives everyone else the job of dwelling on the downside, right? Okay, I think we've got a couple more here. You know, maybe as a leader, you're so protective that you become like a banyan tree, which is this, you know, glorious, huge tree. It provides comfort and shade, but the problem with the banyan tree is that nothing grows underneath it. You know, we keep people out of danger. Sometimes certain people are big thinkers and strategists. Some of you will go and work with some of these like entrepreneurs and visionary leaders. Some of you will be that, and sometimes they're such big thinkers that nobody else has to do any thinking around them. They defer. Oh, let the big visionary figure this out, and everyone else is left sort of myopic. And then I think maybe we've got one more. The perfectionist, who likes to get it just exactly right, perfect. And they see, of course, an A+ in the making. What's it like to work around a perfectionist? Yeah, their experience is a little bit more like this. I hear this said a lot. People said, man, like working for her, I could just never get it right. Like nothing I did was good enough. And pretty soon, you've got people who want to do this, but then they experience something more like this, and what settles in. Okay, would you identify? So here's what we're going to do to earn our break. I want you to identify a diminishing tendency, and I want you to get back with that group of 8, or you can go mix and create a new. In fact, why don't we mix and create a new group of 8? And within 5 minutes, what I hope is you will have circled one of these things that would be your accidental diminisher tendency. So there's a 9 in review. And go to this chart. Oh, we're going to come back there, but go to that chart and circle one of your accidental diminisher tendencies, and then I'm going to invite you to share it with others. Here's what I want you to do. Would you take the next 5 minutes, gather yourself in a group of people, and share your insight. Share your insight. What is it that maybe you might have? In fact, maybe I'll go ahead and play this video now before break. I was going to do it after. Maybe this will give you a little bit of context for this. This is Bill Campbell. He's going to tell a story. When I went to go interview Bill, people had said he was an incredible leader and a multiplier leader. I went to his office in Palo Alto for a multiplier interview. And I sat down, talked with him about some of the ideas, and he said, oh, that's not how I started at all. I started as one of the great diminishers of all time. And he said some of it came from my football training. And then he told me a diminisher story, and I was less interested in the diminisher story. I wanted Bill Campbell, the multiplier. He told me about his early days as a diminisher and about his journey. And I was able to write up that story. Here's a little bit of him sharing that perspective. It started with him having a moment of seeing how he could be diminishing, in some ways with the best of intentions. Here we go. This is Bill.
Donna was sent to me as an emissary.
I might have skipped over one video. Here, let me try this again. There we go.
In my early days in management, I came from a background where, football, the more you knew, the better you were. And I think what you do in the situations that you're in with your management, you want to show everybody that you know everything. And so what you do is you kind of dominate the conversations, you tell people what you think, and you're not listening. And sooner or later it comes upon you that I'm really screwing this thing up. I'm not getting the best ideas from the best people. And I think over a long period of my early career, as I look back on it, I was one of the great diminishers of all time.
Oh, there's more.
Donna was sent to me as an emissary from the group and sat down with me one afternoon and said, "You're back to your old ways. You're not letting us do the jobs that we were hired to do. If we can't participate with you, then it's not going to be any fun being here. If you're going to make every decision and manage everything yourself, then this company's never going to be great, and we're never going to enjoy it." Whew, what a blast. And it was one of those things that when you went home that night, you recognized, God, she did me a great favor, and I really had to go about making a behavior change. What I decided to do was make sure that I used the best of their thinking. And, we did so many unconventional and unusual things at Claris that made us a very unique software company, mostly because I delegated to people who knew a whole hell of a lot more about their function than I did. And once you recognize that when you step back and were able to assess what they were doing, and you knew it was just enormously better than what you were doing, you recognize that there was a true management team. And today when I coach young people in Silicon Valley, I try to make sure they understand what it means to be surrounded by a management team that can each provide expertise and contribution to the entire process.
Not only did Bill grow as a leader to become what he might call a multiplier, he became this incredible coach to so many legendary Silicon Valley CEOs, including Jeffrey Bezos and Larry and Sergey at Google, Steve Jobs at Apple. He learned to build this kind of leadership in others. It began, though, by finding out what he was doing that was diminishing. Here's the assignment. We're going to go to break. So rather than do this in this room, during break, would you find one or two or whoever you're talking to, would you just share with whoever you're talking to what you think your accidental diminisher vulnerability might be? Would you do that? Come back in 15. Thank you. Who was able to talk to someone about one of your accidental diminisher vulnerabilities or tendencies? A few people? Is there anyone who wants to share this? I am a big believer in confession of this stuff, because here's what I've learned is that the leaders who end up becoming the best multipliers are not those that run around talking about their multiplier beliefs and qualities. It's leaders who are able to say, I've got some of these diminisher tendencies. I've got some vulnerabilities. Anyone want to share theirs? Right here. Pacesetter and strategist, and just tell us quickly how this can end up sucking for the people around you. Who else does this? I do this. This is one of my vulnerabilities. One time someone said, man, Liz, sometimes I have a hard time contributing because you come into meetings so prepared and you come in having thought through the issues like you do your homework. And so that you come and you share an idea or something you've done or analysis, and I feel like, well, what do I really have to offer? And I've learned to hold a little bit of that back to create some room for others. Okay, who else has got an accidental diminisher vulnerability? Right here. Yeah, Matt. Wow, he's got that all figured out. Yeah, he talked that out. Who here was blessed with the gift of gab? Yeah, like good at talking? Okay, use this sparingly. Use it sparingly as a leader. Now, what kind of people do we tend to put in leadership roles? People who can talk really well, and so it can end up be a really, really dangerous way you can shut people down. One more, just insight right here, my friend. I'm glad that you said this, because all of these accidental diminisher tendencies, sometimes they're good and sometimes they're detrimental. My guess is they're all things that you have built in your athletic career. They're things companies tend to hire for. You will be attractive to employers when you do this, but I'm just saying, when you sit in a leadership role, be careful. Watch for it. Watch for the downsides of your highest intentions. Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to focus on what you can do to be more of a leader. And my hope is that I offer a couple really, really practical things that you can do as you coach. My hope is that everyone here will help give back and be coaching and developing other athletes and students, but also in your professional career as well. Now, each of these is a bit of a shift. Does anyone recognize this picture? What's it from? This is the then standing World Trade Center. Anyone know who this is? It's a crazy French guy. His name is, okay, his name is not Man on Wire. The name of the movie is Man on Wire, but the guy has a name. He should be more famous than the movie. He's crazy. He's done this a bunch of times. Philippe Petit. He's a crazy guy. And this is quite famous of him. So he, back in the, I think it was mid-70s, surreptitiously strung the cable between the then standing trade towers and quite famously traversed it. They made the documentary Man on Wire, and then they made some movie about it, which I don't think was very good, was it? Yeah. He's like, it was my favorite, but now I'm a little embarrassed to say that. About the DVD. No, so this is 1,500 feet up, and this is like 150 feet across, and he didn't do it with a net or a harness. He just quite famously traversed this. How long was he out on this wire, for those who watched the documentary? This was not like 5 minutes of let's cross it, check it off my bucket list, and call it done. He was out there for 40 minutes. He's like lingering out there. At one point, he's laying on this cable, and then he's like taunting the police that have now assembled below. Once he's out on this cable, he's like doing his thing. He's super comfortable. This is the picture that I like. It's a picture of him just taking a step. And for those of you afraid of heights, like, I'm so sorry. I'm going to leave this picture up here for a few minutes. No throwing up in the room. Okay, so, but this is the moment I want you to think about, not what he did out on the wire. It started with a moment. And I think we're all going to remember sort of Ronnie Lott's like, let's go. Let's go. So it started with a moment, and he was asked this question by an interviewer who said, well, first of all, why did you do this? It's kind of an obvious question, and he's a crazy guy, and he said, well, something he couldn't resist, like, spoke to him and called him out on the wire. And you're like, okay, we have names, clinical names for this, but nothing speaks to me and calls me out to do these things. But anyway, he said, so the more interesting question was, how did you get yourself out there? And his answer was interesting. So he describes this moment where he's standing on this cable. His back foot is on the cable that's right at the edge of the building, sort of safety. And then he's got his front foot on the cable, and that part's over this expanse in this 1,500-foot drop. And he's there on this edge, and he says, I've got all my weight on my back foot. And then he said, I had to make a decision. Do I shift my weight? And he said, something I couldn't resist called me out on the cable. And he shifted. So now his weight's on the front foot. And what happens next? When your weight's forward. The next step comes, and the one after it comes. Like, that part wasn't hard. The part was this shift. And it was learning to let go and do something uncomfortable. That's what we're going to spend the rest of our morning on, is simple shifts. Shifts in the way you maybe think about leadership. Shifts in the way you contribute that will help you not only bring all the best of your own capability, do the same for the people around you. Think of them all as like that little first step. We're going to experiment with some of them. And we're going to do 3 of these shifts to be more of a multiplier. Now, the first shift is what I think is the most profound shift that a leader can make. A lot of people figure this out over time. This is something to figure out early in life if you can. And it's shifting out of the mode of telling and providing answers and operating in the mode of inviting and the mode of inquiry. And it's leading through asking questions. The kind of questions that focus the energy and capability of a team on an important challenge. Like Matt McCauley. You know, what would we need to do to get to $1 a share this fiscal year? He asks the question and it focuses his team. That's the thing we're trying to do. I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to ask you the question. Or ask the question that shifts the burden of thinking, of solving from you as a leader and shares it with your team. You know, I get to work with a lot of leaders here in Silicon Valley, and most of them are just working too hard. And they feel this incredible burden of solving it, closing the deal, having the answers. And the multiplier strategy is take that burden. It's a sweet burden when you share it with your team. People want it because what do? They want to come to work every day giving 100% of their capability, helping to solve those problems. We are going to do this by taking what I call the extreme question challenge. And the extreme question challenge is asking you to lead a conversation by only asking, with no statements. I want to tell you about the first time I took this challenge. It was, I think, about 16 years ago. I'm at Oracle. I still have that job. Like, I'm running the university, but it's not like a little university. Now it's like a really, really big operation. I've got this big job, nothing compared to my job at home. I didn't have 4 children then, but 3 children, and they're ages 6, 4, and 2. That's the first 3. Remember, like 2 years apart, all like carefully spaced. 6, 4, 2. Big job at work, big job at home. I'm at work. I'm talking to my buddy Brian, who also has a couple young kids, and I said, you know, Brian, I don't feel like I'm being a very good mom right now. I feel like I'm like the, you know, like I'm constantly telling my kids what to do. I'm like a little dictator in my house because, and I'm describing this, and I said, I feel like I've become the bossy mom. And Brian said, he said, Liz, you don't strike me as the bossy mom type. And I thought, well, I'm going to need to educate him about this. So I described bedtime at our house. I assume no one in here is in the parent range of their life yet. There's probably a few people here, maybe in the back row, who have gotten to the parent stage of their life. When you've got the 6-4-2 combo pack at your house, what is bedtime like? In a word. Yeah, it's the running of the bulls. It's total chaos. And so I decide that's what I'm going to describe to him. I'm going to describe bedtime. So I'm like, this is how it goes at our house with 6, 4, and 2. It's, okay, kids, time for bed. Put that away. Leave her alone. Put that back. Come over here. Brush your teeth. Go back. Use toothpaste. Okay, no. Go back. Get your toothbrush wet this time. Okay, story time. Get a book. No, not 5 books. No handfuls of books. Give me 1 book. No big books. No princess books. No Disney. I want a book about that big with cardboard pages. Like, you know, low word count book. Good, story time done. Say your prayers, you know, into bed, not my bed, out of her bed, back to bed. And you know, there's no yelling going on here. It's just constant telling. And it's not working very well. So I described this to him. He then offers a little bit of coaching, which I wasn't looking for. This was recreational complaining, honestly. But yet he offers a little bit of coaching. He says, Liz, why don't you go home and try just asking your kids questions? And I started speaking Spanish then because I was like, imposible. I can't do that. That's ridiculous. Like, I get home at 6. I don't go to bed till 9:30. I can't just ask questions. And I decided as he mostly stayed quiet and let me just sort of fight this out in my head, I just said, you know what, that's an interesting challenge. That's a challenge I'm going to take. I drove home that night, in some ways summoning, I was playing with this, going, could I really do that? I'm summoning strength. I pull in my driveway, I park the car, I like sit there for just a minute and going, I can do this, and I go in. Like I'm going in. And we get through dinner, and we get through playtime, and I'm just asking questions. It's not that hard, but then we get to bedtime. Now it gets hard. And I think I'm going to do this by only asking. So what would you ask? Yeah, have you brushed your teeth? What else might you ask? Do you want to be tired tomorrow? I have to ask that one to my 15-year-old all the time. Yeah, what's wrong with you might not be the best opening question. Like, why are you torturing me? So this is what I started with. I just started with, hey, kids, what time is it? You know, it turns out they knew. See, the 6-year-old, we'd been going to bed. They'd been going to bed at about the same time every night. And so they had these associations. When it gets dark outside, we go to bed. And so they knew, and they're like, well, it's bedtime. Well, what do we do first? Okay, where do those toys go? Okay, who needs help getting their pajamas on? Okay, so I help the 2-year-old. Okay, who's going to get their teeth brushed first tonight? And then the questions are starting to flow. First, I'm working hard, but then I'm like, okay, whose turn is it to pick the story tonight? What story are we going to read? Okay, who's going to read the story, Mom or Dad? I cheated just a tiny bit on that part. And then I'm like, okay, what do we do when story time's over? And they're like, well, Mom, we say prayer. I'm like, wow, you know that. You picked up on that. And then, you know, when we're done praying, I just said, okay, who's ready for bed? Me! You know, like, I'm ready. And it was now a contest. It went from chaos to, it was a contest, like who could get in bed first. They get in their beds. I'm still a little suspicious, but they get in their beds. They go to sleep. I'm left with nothing really to do but to stand in the hallway. We have a hallway, like a landing area that connects the bedrooms. And I'm just standing there thinking, not just like what's happened to my children, but I'm thinking, how long have they known how to do this? Because I had been doing it for them and to them, but it turns out they knew. And I kept it up for 3 nights, just very fascinated by this shift that was happening in my house. Turns out, you guys probably have already figured this out, it was not a shift in my kids at all. Nothing really changed with my kids. It was a shift in me entirely. And I learned that if I asked questions, it invited other people to find answers and to take ownership and to do things for themselves. And I kept it up for 3 nights, just fascinated by what was happening. And I started to realize, I bet the people who work for me at Oracle, the people on my management team who had big jobs as well, they might not need me telling them what to do. Maybe what they need from me is an intelligent question, something to get their head around, to focus them. It changed me forever. Now, I am not suggesting that a good leader would operate permanently in question mode. Okay? That is creepy. Don't do this. Okay? And certainly don't do it and tell anyone that I said you should do this. But what I've learned is that if you experiment with this idea, try it out a few times, get good at it, you know when it's time to ask, and then you know when it's time to tell. Like with my own kids at home, I do the same thing at work, is I go into extreme question mode when something's gone really wrong or when something's gone really, really right. And I've learned, instead of jumping in and smothering someone's success, to ask them about it, to tell me about it. What happened? Why was it successful? How are you feeling about that? Okay, that's the extreme question mode. We're going to practice it, and here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go right to it. I want you to find a partner, and this is a great chance for another standing break. You can do this with the person right next to you, or you can stand up, walk across the room, find someone else. All we need is an even number of people, and we can sort that out. You're going to find a partner. You're going to pick a topic. It's a topic that you both know something about. You could pick the obvious thing, something about your sport. You might pick a workplace topic. You're here in Silicon Valley. You could pick what's happening. Like, is Tesla going to be able to ramp up their production of Model 3s? Like, you can pick anything you want, something that you're both interested in, and you're going to pick someone to go first. Now, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do all that. So this is not spend 5 minutes coming up with the topic. And if you can't figure out who's going to go first on this, I'm going to say the person with the longest hair goes first. Okay? So you just kind of like size someone up like on the hair. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to find your partner, and then when that 30 seconds is over, I will explain the challenge. So find your partner, pick a topic, figure out who's going to go first. Okay, can I ask you to pause? Hopefully you found your partner. I'm going to assume you found your partner and a topic. And who's going to go first? If you are going to go first, give me your hand so I can see that everyone, we know who's going to take the lead in this conversation. Okay. Here's what to do. If you are going first, you are going to play the role of the multiplier. Your job is going to be to take the extreme question challenge. You've got 3 jobs to do. One is find out what your partner knows about this topic. Number 2, I want you to have a point of view of your own, and I want you to make it known, meaning bring your own point of view into this conversation. Like we said, it's not about being empty-headed and just using ideas of others. I want you to have a point of view, bring it in, but I want you to do it by only asking questions. That means you're not going to say stuff like, oh, good idea, oh, I agree, like, I like it, you go, like, you know, none of that. Everything you say has a question mark. I can tell you I have a nose for questions like, do you agree with me? Okay? Am I not right about this? Like, I will find those questions. I will hunt you down if I hear those. Now, if you are the colleague, you have a job to do as well. Offer your insights. Keep them short, crisp, with a challenge for some of us who are always on and talkers. Short and crisp with the purpose of just letting that other person work this out, okay? Suffer just a little bit on this challenge, okay? It's a hard challenge. Can you do this? Okay, that first night I did this for like 3.5 hours. Could you do it for 3.5 minutes? Okay, you can do it standing up, sitting down, whatever you want. I'm going to set a timer. Multipliers, nothing but questions. I want you to push yourself. Don't make any introductory comments. Open up with a question and go. For those of you who are asking the questions, playing the multiplier role, how was it? It was challenging and easy, interesting. It was a lot of listening. It was just listening. He said it wasn't just listening, it was understanding. Like, I really understand what he does and where he works. Interesting. Another experience with it. Matt. You know, Matt, thank you for coming to this summit, but thank you for bringing that insight. Like, to listen to not understand means to let your curiosity linger just a little longer before you jump in and go, oh, I know this. It's like something I experienced. Yeah, it's a really nice orientation. Okay, did anyone find it was hard? Yeah, if you're doing it right, it should be kind of hard. Should be kind of hard, at least at first. Anyone find it was interesting? Fun? Yeah, if done right, it should be hard and fun for the leader. For those of you who were on the receiving end of this, what was it like? Have someone ask you questions, nothing but questions for 3.5 minutes. It was?
Trying not to ask
I said, I caught myself trying not to ask. Yeah, I'm asking you to do something that is not a natural dialogue. Did anyone find it was hard? It should be hard because you might run out of opinions quickly. Yeah, see, normally we ask someone a question, they give an answer, we run with it. If you want to do deep thinking or disruptive innovation, the really hard stuff, it takes asking and really thinking deeply. It's a great way to really deepen thinking in an organization. Hopefully it was not only hard, it was also fun. Like, who doesn't like being asked, what do you think? Okay, done well, this should be hard and fun for both people. Okay, Yasser says he spoke a language to me without ever saying what he was thinking. Yeah, did anyone struggle to bring your point of view into the conversation when all you could do was ask questions? See, because the type of questions you ask start to indicate that you're interested in something and you have some concerns about something, or maybe you see opportunities. And you can do so much with a question. Now, can a question be used to manipulate? Oh, absolutely. But done well, a question can be used to open, to enlighten. So what we're going to do, we're going to do round two. So we're going to switch roles on this, but we're going to make it a little bit more fun on this round, which is Optimist code for it's going to be harder. Yeah, okay, it's going to be harder, but for me, harder equals, this is going to be way more fun on round two. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to go back to this. This is something Tim Brown said, CEO of IDEO, famously creative global design firm that is very involved here at the D School at Stanford. He says, as leader, probably the most important role we play is asking the right questions and focusing on the right problems. If you're focusing on the wrong questions, you're not really providing the leadership you should. And then he goes on to say, and would you read this for us? Yeah, coming up with the right, it's the leader's job not just to ask questions, but it's the leader's job to ask the right questions that get people focused on the right thing. But it's not necessarily easy, and not all questions are created equal on this. There are some questions that are a lot better than others. Here's what we're going to do in round two. Do you have a comment you want to make? Yeah. Thank you for asking. I have no idea what IDEO stands for. We just call it IDEO. IDEO, ideate. I don't know if it's an acronym. It might just be one of these like little smushed words. There's probably a word for it. Does anyone here know, any officials, any of you know IDEO? You know what? Welcome to Silicon Valley. We make up words and name companies after them. Yeah. Thanks for asking. Not a dumb question at all. Here we go. This is, I call it the question value ladder. And what it says is that there's some questions. Yeah, if you could stand up, sit down. We're going to just be 2 minutes at this. Some questions are a lot more valuable than others. Good leaders are going to ask questions high up on this ladder. At the bottom, we're going to walk through this. You can probably see where I'm going with this. What do you think I want to do in round two? I want you to ask questions high up on this ladder. Okay, here we go. At the bottom of the ladder, the least valuable questions tend to be closed questions. A closed question is one you can answer yes, no to. Who's got a topic that you were talking about that we can play with here? Vincent, what was your topic? Okay, the topic is police brutality. Someone give me a closed-ended question in that conversation. Have you been abused by a police officer? Somebody ask me now an open-ended question. It's one that elicits ideas or explanations. How does it make, what's been your experience with this? How does it make you feel? Okay, a leading question. A leading question are questions you're asking that are driving someone to go do something that needs to be done. That night when I'm putting my kids to bed, they're almost all leading questions. I need them to brush their teeth and to do certain things. Somebody asked a leading question, like, let's say you want someone to go take a certain action. What might you ask on the same topic? Yeah, do you think it's an institutional problem? Okay. Have you ever helped facilitate a discussion? I'm saying, you know what, I kind of want you to think about facilitating a discussion, so I'm going to ask you a question that's going to get you thinking in that direction. Good. Some people say, well, leading questions, aren't those manipulative questions trying to get someone to do something? And my response is, well, of course they are. Yeah, because to manipulate means to like make something happen, to like contort, to cause action. As a leader, are there times you need to get people to do certain things? Oh, absolutely. Where it becomes manipulative is if this is all you can do. If all you can do as a leader is try to get people to do what you want done, what you think should be done, you're probably a little more than a diminisher in disguise, maybe with some good skills. Higher than that, maybe even more valuable, is a guiding question. A guiding question is helping somebody see something you can see. Maybe as a coach, you see that the team doesn't have sufficient conditionings to get through like a tournament or to play back-to-back games. You can see it, but you want the players to perhaps come to see that too. What might be a guiding question? Getting someone sensitized to see it. It's with the assumption that if somebody sees it, they might take different action than you, but they'll do something intelligent. Yeah, Vincent. Thank you. It's a brilliant example of this. It's helping someone see the experience of another person. And in the workplace, it might be helping someone see, well, you know, what would this look like from the customer's perspective? Like, who might have issue with this? What might be the problems that we're going to experience? Okay, a discovery question. A discovery question is you don't have an answer, and they don't have an answer, and you're going to figure it out together. How do we eliminate police brutality? Yeah, that's a one that we're struggling to find an answer to that together. Now, a challenge question. I consider these the most valuable questions. This is all sort of in the realm of management, getting stuff done. It's probably in the realm of leadership. Up at the top is probably the realm of really innovation, coming at our problems with very different orientations. A challenge question is one that challenges the prevailing assumptions we have about something. What's a challenge question? And louder for me. What do you know about the history of police? What do you know about the history of policing in America? Yeah. Would you trust a robot to be a police officer? Like, we have an assumption that police officers are human beings that carry with them values and biases. But yeah, what if that job didn't carry those biases? Okay, can you see what I want you to do in round two? What I want you to do is I want you to work as high up on this ladder as possible. If this ladder made no sense to you, you are absolved of it. But here's what I want you to do. If it made no sense whatsoever, what I want you to do in round two is I want you to ask questions that you don't already have answers for, that you don't already have strong opinions about. Questions that will cause you to learn. Switch roles. You've got another 3 minutes. Hopefully some of you got asked interesting, challenging questions that made you think. When a team leader, when the project manager, the team leader, the coach takes the role of asking the questions, what happens on a team? There's a bunch of stuff that happens. Like, what's the natural byproduct of the leader asking the questions? What happens? It increases conversation. Ideas start to flow. Engagement goes up. Sometimes fear of like, ooh, maybe I showed up here not ready to think. And maybe next time I'm going to come ready to engage. What else might happen? Encourages the team to take a more active role. Ownership goes up because people start to assume it's their job, not the leader's job, to find the answers. It increases vulnerability, absolutely. Because when the leader shows that, like, I've got ideas, but I don't have all the answers, they're creating a crack. And what kind of leaders do we really want to work for? Strong, invincible leaders? Or actually leaders with a few flaws, maybe a few cracks, leaders who don't have all the answers? Most of us want to work for the person who actually needs us. Because it's fun to see amazing people. Maybe go hear them talk, maybe watch them play, but who do we want to work for? We want to work for someone who allows us to be at our best as well. Yeah, when a leader shows a little bit of vulnerability, people come in to help. Rarely do people come in for the kill with their bosses and their leaders. They come in to compliment. And I don't mean to praise, I mean to compliment and help them figure that out. Okay, some of you might decide, you know what, I'm going to take this extreme question challenge at work. Some of you might take it this afternoon as you're working on your teams. You're going to have some teamwork. You're going to have some seeking you've got to do. You've got some brain teasers, and some of you might go right into answer mode, but some of you might say, you know what, I might ask better questions. And maybe the teams that find the answers, it might be the ones that they ask really, really good questions. So some of you may choose to do that. Okay, are we ready for number 2 on this? Yasser, what do you got for us? Yeah. Nice and loud. I hope everyone has a few of those crazy outcome moments. I find that the time when I want to tell, when I want to preach, when I want to give someone the answer, if I'll stop and say, this is a good opportunity for the extreme question challenge, amazing things happen. Man, I wish there's a bunch of stories I would love to tell you about. We don't have time for. Are you ready for shift number 2? Second thing, well, you know, not all these are going to be useful to everyone, but I hope you find one thing that might be helpful to you. And on that sheet of paper, that little matrix sheet, there's a list of multiplier practices. We're going to focus on 3 here today. Okay, the second one is what I call to name the genius. I mentioned that these diminishing leaders, they tend to utilize people as resources, whereas these multipliers tend to see people's genius. Now, is everyone in the world a genius? No, I think we have actually lots of evidence to say no. Okay? Lots of evidence on this. Not everyone in the world is a genius. Okay? Does everyone have genius? Yeah, that everyone has something that they do really well, and maybe even brilliantly. And the best leaders look for that, and they find it, and then they put it to work. And it's almost like this deal, which is if I can figure out your native genius, you know what I get to do with it? I get to work it. Yeah, I'm going to put that to work. It's not just so that I could admire it like a piece of art. It's a tool. Yeah, I'm going to put it to work. Let me give you a couple examples of this. Let me see, one of my favorite leaders, Larry Gelwix. Does anyone know here who Larry Gelwix is? He's this amazing coach that is not known by lots of people. Larry Gelwix coaches a high school club rugby team. They're in Highland, Utah. He's perhaps the most winning coach out there. In the 33 years that he has coached this team, they've won 19 national championships. They've had a win-loss record. Oh, I've forgotten his win-loss record. I think it's like 400 and something wins to 9 losses. And about half those losses are losses they could have taken as wins, but he decided to use them as teaching moments for his team. We interviewed one of his players, a guy named John, and he said, you know, that we were in a practice, we were just kind of talking around in the practice, and Gelwix says to John, he's like, John, we have you in this position because you're fast. And John, I mean, he's a good athlete. He's always seen himself as a good athlete. He never saw himself as particularly fast. But he said, we need you in this position because we need your speed. So what does John do in practice? He starts working on speed. What happens when he gets into game situations where you need just a little bit more speed? He's like, I'm fast. He became one of the fastest players in this league. And he said it was Coach who helped me see that I was fast and could be faster. Sort of spotlighting something brilliant about him. Stephanie Post works for Sysmex. She's got someone on her team. She takes this challenge to identify native genius. She sees someone on her team who's actually brilliant at analysis, but is in a role that's kind of administrative. But she says, you know what, we could actually put that to work. They find some work being done in another part of the department, and they feed it over to her, and it's analytical work. She thrives at this work, so much so that Stephanie said, you know, we've got this huge piece of work that we have to hire an outside a contracting firm, like some data analysis work. They're paying a lot of money for it. She said, could we just take that work that we contract outside and could we give it to you? And what does she say? Not my job, don't want to do it? She said, like, let's go. Bring it on. And so she takes on that work. They save money. You know, her employee is thriving in this. Toby Jenkins and Adam Franklin. Toby is actually a phenomenal water polo player. He was on the Australian Olympic team and played in Athens. And he's a phenomenal executive. He runs this company called Blue Wire Media in Australia out of Brisbane. He and Adam, his co-founder, they read this, the Multipliers book. They write me a letter, and they said, your native genius concept, this concept about what people do easily and freely, like it's changed our company. And he said, we did it just like you said in your book, and it was just brilliant. It was like the best thing we've ever done. And he then describes what they did, and as I'm reading this, I'm like, wow, that's nothing like I had thought about. That's nothing what I meant, but they did something different. And it was kind of brilliant. What they did is they pulled their little team together. See, I had imagined that leaders would sit in their offices and contemplate their team and identify people's native genius. Ah, this is so-and-so. She's really analytical. Okay, this is Mark. Mark's a bridge builder. We can use him here. They just got their whole team together around the conference table. They described, here's this concept of native genius. It's what you do easily. It's what you do freely. And then they went person by person, and they would say, you know, Ibuki, what's Ibuki's native genius? And everyone would chime in and say, here's what I think you're brilliant at. At the end, you know, Ibuki would get to defend himself. Hey, you know, this is what I think I'm brilliant at. They'd put a name to it, and they're like, how do we use it better inside this company? And they would talk about each person. Then they would move to the next person. I'm like, wow, nothing like I imagined. I'm from Northern California, and so I'm prone to like hippie and granola approaches to things. And I'm like, and that seems a little too weird for me. So it's got to be weird. We started experimenting with this idea with other companies, and you know what they all said? It's the best thing we've ever done, is to pull a team together and say, what is each person's brilliance, and how do we put it to use? Okay, so this is the idea of native genius. What I'd love to have you do, if we're successful at this in the next 10 minutes, everyone here will have written down your own native genius. I think it's hard to find the native genius in others if you're not clear on the native genius that you bring. So if we're successful, 10 minutes from now, everyone will have identified their native genius, and then I'm going to ask one person maybe we haven't heard from yet, who would volunteer his or her native genius, and we're going to auction it off. We're going to have a native genius auction. Okay? Meaning, we're going to listen and hear about this person's native genius, and during the auction, we're going to figure out how might we use it. We're going to bid for it. Like, how could you put it to work? Because it's not just admiring the art, it's using it and putting it to work. Okay? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you to think for yourself, what is it that you do better than anything else you do? I'm going to ask you to think outside of the physical realm and think about your conceptual, your intellectual capabilities. What do you do better than anything else you do? What do you do better than the people around you do? What do you do without effort? What just comes so easily to you that you're baffled that it's hard for other people? What do you do without being asked? What do you do without pay? What do you tend to do this not only at work, you tend to do it at home. Do you all know what it is? So there's a little sheet of paper. It looks something like that. in that first box, just start to scribble some things. What do you do easily and freely? And then put a name to it. I'll give you an example. Probably a native genius I have, it came from a conversation I had at Oracle. I said to one of my colleagues, I'm like, hey, why do I always get put in charge? Why do I always get put in charge, particularly in meetings? Why can't I, so this was recreational complaining again. Like, why is it that when I go to a meeting, I can never just sit and listen and contribute like everyone else? Why does someone always hand me the pen and tell me to go up to the board? And he goes, oh, it's that thing you do. That thing you do. I'm like, what thing I do? He goes, oh, you sit back, you listen, you take in stuff, and then you can always pop out, here are the 3 most important points and what we should go do. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem like a big deal. Like, there's no classes that teach you how to do that. That's just like nothing. He goes, oh, no, it's not nothing, Liz. Lots of people don't do that well. He goes, that's your superpower. I'd put the label on that. I'd call that, I'm good at synthesis. Sometimes my friends give it the superpower name of, oh, Liz goes from can of worms to bullet points really fast. And then, how might you use it? So would you take a couple minutes, give it a name, and think, what are some places that this could be used? You could think, what are jobs that it might be used? Or in what way does my job or my role use this? Okay, if you've got something, my guess is half of you feel really good right now, like, yeah, I think I know this. And then there's half of you going, I'm not sure I got this. Here's what I want you to do. Would you take, so I'm gonna ask someone to volunteer, and we're gonna auction off somebody's native genius. Before we do that, will you take 2 minutes, and what I want you to do, a minute each, turn to a partner, and just say, here's what I think my native genius is. If you haven't figured out how to write what the right words are, just talk it out with someone, just to get closer. 1 minute for each person. I'll come in at the 1 minute mark. Just share, here's what I think my native genius might be. It's okay if it's in hypothesis mode, still go. Okay, who's willing to just share, hey, here's my native genius, and then we're gonna find things to do, and you wanna, come on up. Yeah, come on up. Yeah. Here we go. And tell us your name as you're coming on up. Okay, Bobby, come on up. And what I want you to do is, it's a little awkward, but I'm just going to ask you to tell us what you're brilliant at. Well, then I'll look tall if you stand there, but come on all the way up.
Testing.
Okay, Bobby, tell us something that you're kind of brilliant at. And part of what we're doing this is I want people to get comfortable talking about what you're brilliant at. Because here's my theory. I don't think leaders can really see and use the brilliance of others until they're first comfortable that they bring their own brilliance. Like, I actually want to work for the genius who's so confident in her or his genius that they come into work going, I'm brilliant. I'm brilliant and I'm over it. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that they're not needing to prove it every day. I want people to be really comfortable. Like, here's what I bring. Tell us something you're brilliant at.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm completely confident, like as you said, but as far as what I believe that is my native genius, I would say is like sharing my experiences and some of the things that I've learned. I constantly catch myself in like a lecturer, professor type of mode, and so especially with like younger kids, I'll like go into like, hey, I remember I did this, I did that, and I've noticed that especially kids, because they don't really want to hear, any lectures, so they're like, oh, stop lecturing me. But it's like I enjoy sharing, some of the things that I've learned, and even with some of the guys that I've met here, I'll share like my experiences with traveling and some of the things that I've done. So.
Okay, so you've got someone here who's good at sharing his experiences, what he's learned, and helping other people learn from him. Do you do this sort of in work settings?
Not exactly. So normally the way that I do it is like through coaching or just mentoring.
Okay. So somebody give this a name. Storytelling? Teaching?
The professor.
The professor? Okay, so that's going to be his superhero name. Okay, you've got someone with some professor qualities who's got some life experience, going to teach the young. here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about how you could use Bobby's, the professor, native genius, and put it to work. I want you, we could start with the coaching and young people place, but I want you to go creative with this. I want you to, and so what we're gonna do is you're gonna make an offer, essentially. You're gonna bid for it. Here's how, if Bobby was working on your team, here's what you could do with it. You can do this in the sports realm, in work realm, in a social capacity. You can do this on our biggest problems that we've got here in our country and beyond, okay? And Bobby, here's what it's gonna do. You're gonna listen to all these bids, and the winning bid is gonna be the one that you go, yeah, like, let's go, let's do that. Like, I would love to sink my teeth into that. In fact, I would do that for free. I would do it for free, okay? Who's got one? Right in the back. Strategic, oh, nice, nice, nice. That's a good one. That's nice and creative. Who else has got one? Help organize Boys and Girls Club. Okay, someone else make an offer here. Why not hire him? Hire me for that. That's a good gig. Yeah, okay. Yeah, don't be tricked by the travel, the exotic nature of that. Don't be deceived by that. Okay. Right here. Okay, somebody give me like a non-traditional view at this that doesn't necessarily involve something that is called a mentor or a coach, but uses this skill set in very different ways, maybe in technology applications. Or what do you got? Nice, nice. Another one. Okay, doesn't quite match the creative use of that, but that's a good one. And here we are, like one of the finest, universities on the planet. Okay, maybe two more in the back. Okay, good. We are here in Silicon Valley. Someone give me 2 ways that you can use this in a tech company with technology. Product training, good. See, it's not like this like mentoring the young, but product training would be a great way. What's another one? Like, and maybe a very technical job. A data scientist. Yeah, like what are the experiences? What can we cull from this, and what we can learn from it?
That's not me.
He had you more on the professor. Okay, one more, maybe 2. Yeah, story. Sold. Nice. Bobby, thank you. So would this be the winning bid?
I think so. A couple people kind of like had something similar, like kind of like what he said, and there was a few others that mentioned something similar, but I've noticed like a lot of interest in like branding and marketing and creating like a story for brands and companies and stuff.
Okay, great. Done. So Bobby, thank you. Thank you for being willing to do this. What I appreciate about that is it's taking something that's fundamentally core to him, and instead of like finding, oh, here's a job that looks exactly like that, a coach, a mentor, a professor, it's saying, you know what? There's lots of jobs that would use that capability. Someone yesterday said something to me. He said, you know, once a young person said to me that life is not about, finding things that you like to do and getting to do things you like to do. It's about learning to like the things that you do. And sometimes we go looking for these dream jobs, but there's a lot of value that comes from saying, what is the job I have, and how do I figure out how to use my native genius in that? Maybe I really never saw myself as marketing software products, but man, I could do storytelling about that, and I could create. And so how do you find roles that use your native genius? And how do you help people on teams connect their native genius with the work that needs to be done? when I imagined people, managers identifying people's native genius, I kind of thought like, okay, they would probably first go to the people on their team that were superstars and figure, oh yeah, here's your native genius. It's easy for them to see. But sometimes it's harder to see for the people who don't necessarily seem like the superstars, or maybe people who don't work like you, or maybe even the person who feels like a bit of a problem. Does everyone have a work experience where there was someone on the team that felt like a little bit of a problem to you? Yeah, maybe taken at its fullest, this idea of identifying people's native genius is done best when you can do it for someone who thinks very differently than you, who works differently than you, maybe looks differently than you, and come to see what their native genius is and put it to work. I have had to do this many, many times in the workplace. I've also had to do it as a mom. I've got 4 kids. I've mentioned this several times. 3 of them are all sort of very much alike, and there's one that's kind of different than the rest of the kids. And we're a pretty adventurous family, like to go out and do things, love doing adventurous things. Our kids are always up for that, like riding big roller coasters and jumping off bridges over rivers into like icy cold water, trying new things, traveling places. They're all blessed with this great sense of adventure. But we have one kid who's really different. And it's not that he lacks a sense of adventure. It's that he lacks a sense of fear. Does anyone know this? Probably seen people on the field like this. Anyone know someone who just runs towards danger? So I have a son like this. Lane knows my son, who's like this. And he lives by the motto of see it, climb it, figure out how to get down later. Think it, make it, clean up, absolutely, positively, never, ever, ever. And he's kind of a bit of a challenge to live with. Like everything of value in our house gets used in one of his projects. If he's building something and he needs a 2x4 for what he's building, if that 2x4 is in my deck railing, it's no longer in my deck railing, It's just everything gets used in one of his projects. I brought a picture of, this is his fort. Like, this is where we find everything of value. It's a picture of a fort he built when he was 13. It's like where we find the camping gear. It's where we find the computers. It's just the problem is what is in his fort. The problem with this is where this thing is. And this is just the beginning. This is the stuff that's legal that I can show you about. Vincent, this kid is going places. This is not how I was seeing it. I'm thinking, this kid is going places. Where am I thinking he's going? This is a kid's going to jail. He actually uses this. Lane, you've been to our house. This is about 35 feet up there. It took me 2 months to even notice it was up there. It's so high. Okay, he uses this as a driving range to where my neighbors come down and bring the golf balls and say, you know what, I think your son's got a driving range on top of your roof. So as his mom, now I know this is hard for most of you in the room to do, but I want you to kind of put the mom hat on here. Some of you can try this as the dad hat. How do you think I see this? How do you think I see him, my 13-year-old who does stuff like this? And this is just the beginning. I see him as wild. Good. That's a good start. Keep going. I see him as a liability. Thank you. The neighborhood, the boys who live just next to us, they're not even allowed in our house. They will come over. They've got boys the same age as our boys. The boys will, little Kyler will come over and knock on the door, and he'll be like, hey, can Josh play? I'm like, yeah, come on in. And then he says the same thing every time. I keep inviting him in just really more for the humor in this. I'd say, come on in. And he goes, I can't come in. I'm like, why not? He goes, I'm not allowed in your house. Why not? My mom thinks it's an unsafe place. Because she knows about all this stuff. So yeah, of course I see him as a liability. He's like a danger to himself and to others. And it doesn't take much to start to see this all as a total problem. And for quite a while, I was seeing this, this is a problem. This is a problem to be stopped. And I decided I was going to apply some multiplier logic to this. And instead of seeing it as a problem, I was going to look for, what is he brilliant at? My son, his name is Christian. What does his mind do easily? What does it do freely? Like, what was this kid's mind built to do? This is my middle linebacker son. So that was a few years back. I spent a couple years just watching and studying this. How do you think I've come to see this kid? He's 19 now. I see him as absolutely brilliant. I truly do. I see him as this, I see him as fearless. I see him as an innovator. I don't see him as a problem. I really see him as this problem solver. And I think about all the amazing things that he's going to do. And it's funny, it's changed our relationship. We didn't have a bad relationship before, but our relationship now is, when he's done something brilliant but kind of dangerous, you know who's the first to hear? Mom's the first to hear. He comes running to tell me this stuff. And a couple years ago, because I enjoy it. I celebrate it because I see the incredible brilliance. I came back a couple years ago from a one day. I was gone one night. I come home, and he says, Mom, I ran into the coffee table, and I busted open a gash on my leg, on a shin. And I'm thinking, I didn't get a text message from your father. I didn't get an alert from Stanford Hospital with a $5,000 bill on this. And I'm thinking, I didn't hear about this. And so he just rolls up his pant leg, and he shows me this 2-inch gash. And he's beaming with pride. And he said, and it has 4 beautiful stitches. And he says, I just stitched myself up. And he tells me about this stuff because years ago I would have said, whoa, we live a mile from Stanford. We would have taken you to the doctors. And I just looked at it and I said, how brilliant. How brilliant and how very cost effective of you to have done this. And we appreciate this. And the things he does are amazing. And people often say, he's just been on a gap year and he's been climbing 20,000-foot peaks, doing some amazing climbing, a lot of it kind of dangerous. And people say, how do you let him do it? I'm like, he's brilliant, and he's smart, and he has figured this stuff out. So I tell you this because maybe there's someone that you work with that feels so different. Their mind works differently than yours, and maybe even they feel like a problem. Train your eye to see their native genius. Not only will it change your relationship, it will change their level of contribution as well. And then the last of our multiplier shifts, and then we're going to talk about a few ways to contribute at your best, is to offer people bigger challenges. Ronnie Lott today said, you got to stay a rookie your whole life. And I wrote a book called Rookie Smarts, and to do it, I did some research, and what I found is that we actually tend to do our best work not when we're highly qualified at something. We actually tend to do our best work when we're at the bottom of a learning curve, when we're new to something, when we've been given a job that's important and hard and we don't totally know how to do it. In some ways, it's when we're new to position that we're at our very best. Is there someone here, maybe I haven't heard from yet, who would come up and help me with this? You're going to play the role of a challenger, and it will involve a rubber band stretched uncomfortably tight. And actually, I can come to you. Let me come to you. I just need someone who will help me to do this. Yeah, you guys have done scarier things than this. Yeah. Would you come on up? You're nice and close here. And you are Zach? Yes, ma'am. Okay, Zach. First of all, the caveat, this is not a magic rubber band, okay? This is a normal rubber band from Staples. Come a little closer this way. Here's what I want you to do. You're going to be the leader. You're going to be the challenger. No need to be afraid. Protective eyewear could have been helpful, but yes. It's okay. So here's what I want you to do. Zach, I want you to stretch this as tight as you possibly can without breaking it, and then hold it there. Tight as you can without breaking it, then hold it there. Not a magic rubber band. I think I have a backup in case it breaks. Okay, now he's going to need some help. Well, first of all, he's way off. Is this as tight as it can go without breaking? No, not even close. Okay? What do you guys think? Okay, so now Zach is probably, he's very compelling to look at right here. Look at his face, right? But I want you to look at me, back to me on this. Watch me, because we are not there when I can hang out like this for a long time. Okay, when it's as tight as it can go without breaking, you will notice I am in a position I cannot sustain. I can hang out here for a while. What do you think? As tight as it can go? Don't yank it. That might be it. Okay, so do you notice what's going on with me here? How long can I stay like this? I am no longer comfortable. This is what happens when you're given a job, a task, an assignment you don't know how to do. It's out of range. It's out of comfort zone for you. You're wobbly. You don't get to stay like this for very long. See, what happens is a lot of leaders relent at this point. They're like, oh, Liz, you know what? You're struggling. Let me help. But if the leader just holds that position, what are my options here? If he doesn't give in, I can let go, or I move forward toward him, which represents contributing, being successful, solving the problem, growing, to which my boss Zach would say, that's it? I mean, that's all you got for me? I mean, my gosh, did you not see this? Okay, come on, whip it up just a little bit. Oh, my. Okay. Okay, yeah, and then what does he get to do next? Does he wait? Now, here's the problem with the corporate world. They're on these cycles of like annual performance goals and things like this, and a lot of managers wait to give you like the next challenge. The research I did on this showed that that takes about 3 months when people are given a new hard thing for them to like figure out how to do it and find some success. And I asked and we measured how long before you're ready for the next challenge. Any guesses? Yeah, it's measured in days, if not like hours. People want a new challenge right away. People begin to feel stale at about 12 months and really stale at about 24 months. So as a leader, what do you get to do next? Yeah. Yeah, back to this point where I'm uncomfortable, which causes me to move forward, contribute, find success, hear the attaboy, and then grow. Thank you. Thank you very much. So as a leader, one of the things you can do is instead of giving people projects that are within their capability, maybe give them stretch challenges that utilize their native genius and invite them to move forward. Okay, we've got just about 15 minutes left together, and I want to shift gears just a little bit. And moving off this idea of what you can do to be a multiplier, I want to answer this question of how you habitize it. How do you make something permanent? I want to share a little bit about my son, Christian. Again, I decided today, because of our shared bond over football, that I was going to maybe pick on my son, Christian. I usually figure out which one of my kids to pick on. I noticed with my son, Christian, fast forward to he's on his gap year now, and he's doing all these amazing things outdoors. I noticed that one of my diminishing habits had kicked in. It was something I do habitually. I love learning. I love environments where people are learning. And when people get excited about what they're learning, he's on a gap year, he's learning some amazing things. Sometimes people's excitement about their learning prompts me to get excited about my learning. And what do you think I might be prone to do? When I'm excited, I see someone's eyes light up with excitement about what they've learned. I want to talk about what I've learned, and I think it's a wonderful, back and forth. It tends to smother other people's learning. I picked up on a habit that I had. A habit is usually bracketed. It's something you do, but it's bracketed by something that triggers that response, and you tend to get a reward for it. So I spent some time mapping out this habit. Like, what was triggering this behavior? What was I getting for it on the surface? but what was I really getting for it underneath? The hidden reward I was getting. And what was the consequence of this? So I decided last December, while my son was on gap year, that I would map this habit out. So it started with what happens when I tend to smother his learning. He comes home, eyes lit up, excited about it. I brought this video to just kind of give you a sense for what this looks like. This is obviously not me, but it's sort of symbolic of what happens when my son comes in. He loves nature. He'll go out to nature. On his gap year, he's been reading some of the most amazing books, like great pieces of literature. He goes out and he reads Emerson, he reads Thoreau. He comes back to tell me what he's read, and he's 1 or 2 sentences into some like wonderful observation he's had, and then I do something like this.
Yeah. Some nights I stay up, cashing in my bad luck. Some nights I call it a draw. Some nights I wish that my lips could build a castle. Some nights I wish they'd just fall off. But I still wake up, I still see your ghost. Oh Lord, I'm still not sure what I stand for. Oh, what do I stand for? What do I stand for? But most nights,
Like she's like, okay,
I don't know.
I go back to doing my thing.
Anymore.
And she comes in big. Okay, so with that in mind, what do you think I tend to do to Christian? He comes in, talks about like this idea with Thoreau, and I'm like, oh, Thoreau, like, okay, you know, oh, I love this idea about living deliberately and this, and I think what's interesting about Thoreau is that like his writing is like a journal because it's all this sort of discovery. And what do you think my son, who had these sparkly eyes about what he had learned, what do you think he tends to do? I noticed he stopped by my office less often to talk about these things. So I mapped it out, and I'm like, okay, you know what? He's excited about what he's learned, so I jump in, I add what I learned. I'm trying to show support for learning and discovery to tell him how much I care about this. But not only reinforcing that I think he's a great student, it makes me feel like a good student too. But what happens is he stops sharing his learning with me. So I remapped this. I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to get a very different result here. He's going to come in excited about something he's done. That's my trigger. It happens not just with my son. It happens at work all the time when employees who work for me, they come in and say they found something, they've done some research. They're excited. Instead, I'm going to listen and ask questions about what he's learned. It's going to show support for learning and discovery, but instead of getting to feel like a great student, I'm going to get to feel like a great teacher, which means that I am going to get to participate that and have him eager in this. I was actually able to change this strategy. He also has developed this love of folk music from the 70s. Well, I am a child of the 70s, and he started listening to Simon and Garfunkel and John Denver, and I was all excited when he was listening to John Denver. He was about, he was starting, he had some of the music going, and I'm like, oh, John Denver, I'm about to say, I love John Denver. He's playing Rocky Mountain High. The words are about to come out of my mouth. Oh, Rocky Mountain High is like the epic folk song from the 1970s. I'm about to say that. What do I do instead? I'm catching myself. What do? I stop and I ask him questions. What do you like about John Denver? What are your favorite songs? And he's like, oh, Mom, I love Country Roads. I love Annie's song. And he said, and I kid you not, he said, and Rocky Mountain High is epic. What changed the behavior for me? I flipped it. And I looked for a trigger. What's the thing that triggers? As we're wrapping up, I'm going to share a few thoughts about contributing at your best. But what I would encourage you to do is not only recognize what is your accidental diminisher tendency, what triggers it? If you're always on, does silence tend to be the trigger? If you tend to rescue, is it when like someone tells you about a problem? What is the thing that triggers it? Find that trigger and swap behavior. Maybe something that gets you something even better. Okay. The last time, I want to share 3 thoughts about not just how you can bring out the best in others, how you can bring your very best to your work, and in some ways how to multiply your impact. The first would be to get on the agenda. I'm going to tell you just a couple experiences I had at Oracle. This was before they asked me to lead the university. I joined the company. I worked in this first job for about 6 months, did well. They were reorganizing, and so I was interviewing for a new group that was being formed in the company, and it was going to be this training group. Well, I had noticed something. I noticed that although we did technical training in the company, we actually needed management and leadership training. And you know, I was really kind of excited about management and leadership training. It's a passion of mine. So I'm interviewing for this job, and I start telling my would-be vice president what I think we can do to build a management training class and curriculum and school inside the university. And he listens to me, and he said, you know, Liz, that's a great idea, and we certainly need it. But you know what? We actually have a different need right now. Your boss has got to figure out how to get about 3,000 new employees into this company and up to speed on Oracle technology, Oracle software. And he said, what would be great is if you helped her solve that problem. And I thought, well, I don't want to do technology training. I wanted to do management training. But what do you think I did? I said, you know what? If that's the biggest problem, then I'm going to go solve that. And I became a technology trainer, and I taught programming to programmers. And all these people we were hiring with CS and electrical engineering degrees and PhDs in AI and all sorts of things. And it was interesting because I did that. When it came time for them to really build out a training department and to start a university, you know who they asked? They asked me. Maybe, and I don't think it was because I had some great capability. I think they saw that I was willing to subordinate my agenda to work on what was important to the company. What I've learned is that if you want to do your best work, don't necessarily come at it from what your agenda is. Your best work will often be done when you use your capabilities in service to somebody else's agenda. Because as you do that, you get seen as the person who's working on the important stuff, and you get more and more opportunity to set the agenda. Figure out how to match your capabilities with the agenda of the company, and all sorts of opportunities are going to open up. I've seen it happen to me. Second, offer people a user's guide to you. This document here that you've seen in front of you really was intended to do two things. One is to help you identify what's your native genius. And a lot of people wait around for other people to discover their native genius, to have bosses that say, oh, I see you're brilliant at this. Liz, you're good at this. Why don't we have you do that? It's very rare that people are going to do that for you. But what you can do is you can offer your native genius to others. For me, probably a make or break moment in my career came when I was running the university. We're working on this big leadership training program, and it involved bringing our leaders together to teach them about our strategy. Well, as I'm running this program, it becomes clear that the strategy is confusing, it's not clearly communicated, and so we decide that before we run this program again, we've got to fix the strategy. I run education. I'm not the strategist. So we agreed that our most senior executives would have an off-site meeting, and they would all get together, and we brought all of our product guys, our technologists together, that they would reshape the strategy. I knew this meeting was happening. I kind of in some ways commissioned the meeting. I needed them to get this tightened up so that we could proceed with this training program. Well, the day of the meeting happened, and I show up at the meeting, uninvited to the meeting. But I knew where it was, and I knew who was going to be there. So I just showed up, and I joined the conversation. I probably arrived a minute or two, and the head of one of our technology divisions, he sees me there, and he's like, oh, Liz, this is our product strategy meeting. And he kind of said something like, you're like the education person. What are you doing here? Do you remember what I said? My friend helped me see what my native genius was. Does anyone remember it? Synthesis. I'm really good at taking in a lot of complexity and data and trying to boil it down to something simple. And that was actually the task that needed to be done. And because somebody else helped me see this, I showed up at this meeting, and what I said to him was, I said, yeah, you know, I may not be one of the product executives. I said, but you guys have to take in a lot of information, and you have to be able to synthesize this down to a really clear strategy, and I'm good at this, and I thought that maybe I could help. And I think one of the other executives are like, yeah, Jerry, leave her alone. Like, she can help us with this. Well, you know what? When push came to shove, you know who they had write the corporate strategy? They said, we're all going to give you input, Liz, and would you author this thing for us? And they allowed me to do that. But I didn't wait till someone invited me to do it. Essentially, I provided them a user's guide to me. Hey, this is what I'm good at, and here's what I can do. Here's how you can use me. And then lastly, you know, the best leaders offer people stretch challenges like Zach and I did, but you know, don't wait till someone offers that to you. Be willing to sign up for a stretch. What I will say is it is an uncomfortable place. As Ronnie said this morning, sometimes it can be hard to be confident in that space, but what I've seen in my research, I've experienced this personally, is that we are absolutely at our best when we're doing something important and hard and doing it new and fresh. Look for places where you can sign up for stretch challenges. This is what I think gets created when we do. This is, we've got Bill. I want a couple final words for Bill, and then what I think the outcome of all that is. I'm going to go back, and can we get volume on it? Yeah, we're good.
Companies are never going to be great if they only have one person making the decisions. It just, you know, it can't happen. And you know, everybody can rave about, you know, how crucial Steve Jobs is to Apple. Believe me, I would say over and over again. I mean, he's so crucial to Apple, you can't believe it. But he surrounds himself with a great team who challenges him and provides him with ideas. You don't think that every idea that pops out of there is all done by Steve himself. And he surrounds himself and allows a great participation from his management team. I mean, he's a real multiplier, and it makes a big difference in his company.
One of the things that Bill taught me is that at the top of the intelligence hierarchy is not the genius, and it's not the lone genius. It's the leader who uses his or her genius to bring out the genius of a team. You know, Steve Jobs' greatest contribution was not his genius. It was how do we create, you know, a whole organization that can do this. I want to wrap up with this video. This is Zia. I'm not related to her. She is 10, and she is in the ski school in Park City, Utah. So she is at Olympic Park. She's 10. She's got a GoPro on her helmet. This is her on top of the 40-meter ski jump. I'm assuming no one in here has ever done one of these. And I'm not allowed to do this kind of stuff. It's strictly prohibited. She has done the 20-meter ski jump before. I want you to watch her do the 40-meter for the very first time. I think it captures what it's like when people are able to work at their very best, and when they have leaders who are willing to give them stretches and to coach them through it and guide them, but not necessarily do it for them or tell them how to do it. Okay, listen for what her coach says and doesn't say. We're going to need max volume on this. And here we go.
I'll be fine.
Have fun.
I'll do it. Well, here goes something, I guess. Oh. Okay, you can do this. I'm gonna jump.
You got it.
Whoa, my ski's slipping off.
Just remember, never snowplow, okay?
No snow plows.
Just keep it straight and you'll be fine.
Okay.
Same thing you do on the 20.
Straight. Do you go faster on the in run?
Little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Is it any steeper, do you think? Not much?
Same steepness, it's just longer.
Well, just longer. Just longer. Just a bigger 20, that's all.
Yep. Have
It's
fun.
a bigger 20. Go ahead. You got this. I got it. It's fine. You'll Go. Just the suspense at the top at the first time freaks you out. That's the only thing. It's so fun. Huh? 60 seems like nothing now. Whoa!
That is young Zia. You know, I think we're at the end of our time. I would hope maybe that there's two ideas that maybe I would leave with you. One is, as you take on leadership roles, you know, if you lead like a multiplier, what I've seen is that when you do this, people give you their best thinking. They do their best work for you, and you create an environment that people might say is a little bit exhausting, but totally exhilarating. That's the first idea. You know, be that kind of leader to others. It's one of the most amazing ways to give back. But the second idea is maybe more subtle, is that as you are transitioning out of college and into the workforce, have you been making that transition over the last couple years? Like, don't just go to work for a company, or don't just start a company. Don't just go to work for a person. Look for someone who's a multiplier to you. Someone who not only sees your genius and recruits it, but uses it on a daily basis, and create for yourself an experience that you might say is a little bit exhausting, but totally exhilarating. You know, contribute that way, be that leader for someone else. We are now at lunchtime. Mark, is there any instructions that we should be giving to the group for this?
Yeah, there's one. We need a standing ovation.
Oh.